The heavyweight champion of the world had never been knocked down in the ring. But on a freezing December morning in Omaha, a single question from a homeless man nearly brought Terence Crawford to his knees. It wasn't the question itself, just a simple request for $1. It was what happened when Crawford looked into the man's eyes. Recognition hit him like a punch he never saw coming. "Marcus," Crawford whispered, his breath visible in the biting Nebraska air. The homeless man flinched, stepping back. Beneath the layers of grime and an unkempt beard, his weathered face twisted in confusion. His eyes, once sharp, confident, alive, now darted nervously beneath a tattered blue hood. "How you know my name?" he asked, voice weary and uncertain. Crawford froze outside the gas station, keys to his Range Rover dangling from his hand. In an instant, he was transported back 15 years to the B&B Boxing Academy, back to a time when a teenage prodigy named Marcus Willis had been his sparring partner. The same Marcus who vanished right before his first professional fight. The same Marcus whose raw talent, for a brief moment, had even outshined Crawford's own. And now here he was, unrecognizable. "Homeless, asking for $1. Marcus Willis," Crawford said again, his voice firm now. "Man, what happened to you?" The man's eyes widened as recognition finally dawned. "Damn. Terence Crawford." For a long moment, neither man spoke. Around them, life went on, cars pulling up for gas, people rushing through the cold. An ordinary Tuesday in Omaha. But between the two men stretched a gulf of years, of choices, of fate. "I guess I need more than $1, huh?" Marcus said at last, attempting a crooked smile that revealed missing teeth. The smell of alcohol lingered even in the open air. Crawford didn't answer. He glanced at his watch. He was already late for a meeting with his management team to discuss his next title defense. Millions of dollars on the line. ESPN cameras waiting. A documentary crew following his every move. "Get in the car," Crawford said suddenly, the decision landing like a right hook. "It's too cold out here to talk." Marcus hesitated, glancing at the luxury SUV. "Man, I haven't showered in weeks. I'll mess up your seats." "I don't care about the damn seats," Crawford replied. "Get in!" As the heater hummed against the 15-degree chill, Crawford studied his old teammate. Beneath the dirt and hollow cheeks, he could still see traces of the 19-year-old phenom who'd once been called Omaha's next great hope, the kid whose lightning-fast combinations had even tagged Crawford during sparring. "No small feat. Where have you been, Marcus?" Crawford asked quietly. "Everyone thought you were dead. Or locked up somewhere." Marcus stared out the window, shame heavy in his voice. "Might as well have been." The story came out in fragments: a construction job after leaving the gym, a pregnant girlfriend to support. Then a back injury, a prescription for oxycodone. And when that ran out, heroin. The rest was a slow collapse: the job, the woman, the daughter he barely knew, and finally his home. "She'd be 14 now," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "My daughter. Haven't seen her since she was 3. Crawford said nothing. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the parking lot in white silence. "So why'd you quit boxing?" Crawford finally asked, the question that had lingered for 15 years. "You were better than half the pros out there." Marcus gave a bitter laugh. "That's the crazy part. I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of ending up like my old man." "Remember him? Always hanging around the gym talking about how he could have been champ if he'd just gotten the right breaks." Crawford nodded. "Old Willie Willis, the gym's cautionary tale of wasted talent." "I didn't want to be that guy," Marcus said softly. "Didn't want to give everything to boxing and end up bitter, broken, with nothing to show for it." He looked down at his filthy hands and gave a hollow laugh. "Funny thing, huh? Trying to avoid one dead end, and I ran straight into a worse one." Crawford leaned back, the weight of 15 lost years pressing down between them. Marcus had climbed to the very pinnacle of boxing, multiple world championships across weight classes, millions in earnings, global recognition. The contrast between him and the man sitting beside him could not have been more stark. "Where are you staying tonight?" Crawford asked quietly. Marcus shrugged. "The shelter if there's room. Under the 30th Street Bridge if there's not." Crawford started the engine. Not anymore. The decision wasn't planned, but once made, he acted with the same decisiveness that had made him a champion. First, he drove to a nearby hotel and paid for a 2-week stay. Then to a department store where he bought Marcus clothes, toiletries, a phone, and a heavy winter coat. Through it all, Marcus stayed mostly silent, afraid that saying the wrong word might shatter the fragile dream he'd stumbled into. It wasn't until Crawford pulled up outside a small medical clinic that Marcus balked. "I don't need a doctor," he muttered. "Yes, you do," Crawford said firmly. "And after that, you need rehab." Marcus's expression hardened. "I didn't ask for all this, man. I just wanted $1. And I didn't ask to find my old sparring partner homeless in the middle of winter," Crawford replied evenly. "But here we are. So what are we going to do about it?" The question hung between them, heavy and raw. Marcus stared down at his dirt-caked hands, his shoulders sagging. "I've been trying to get clean for years," he admitted quietly. "Never make it more than a few weeks." "That's because you've been doing it alone," Crawford said. For the first time since they'd reconnected, Marcus met his eyes, a flicker of the old fighter's fire flashing for just a second. "Why are you doing this, bud?" "You don't owe me nothing," Crawford thought for a long moment. The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure himself. Was it survivor's guilt, faith, decency, or something deeper, a need to right an old imbalance? "Remember Coach Mack?" he asked finally. Marcus nodded. The old trainer who'd discovered them, both two angry kids from North Omaha with fast hands and faster tempers, and turned them into fighters. "Remember what he always said about champions?" Crawford pressed. A faint smile cracked Marcus's face. "A champion never forgets where he came from, and he never leaves his people behind," Crawford finished. "You were my teammate, Marcus. That still means something even after 15 years. Marcus looked away, voice trembling. "I don't deserve this chance." "Nobody deserves anything," Crawford said. "Life's not fair, good or bad. I didn't deserve to make it when so many others from our neighborhood didn't. And you didn't deserve what happened to you either. But second chances, they ain't about what you deserve. They're about what you do with them." Crawford's phone buzzed non-stop, his manager, promoter, family, all demanding to know where he was. The biggest fight of his career was 8 weeks away, every minute of his training schedule already spoken for. Yet somehow, sitting in that car outside the clinic, he'd never felt more certain about a decision. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Addiction never surrendered without a fight. But as he watched Marcus take a deep breath and step toward the clinic doors, Crawford made a silent vow. This time, he won't fight alone. 3 hours later than scheduled, Crawford arrived at the gym. His team's frustration was palpable. "Where the hell have you been?" demanded Brian Bomac McIntyre, his longtime trainer and manager. "ESPN's been here since 9. Crawford ignored the question, pulling Bomac aside. "I need a favor." By evening, arrangements were made. Marcus was admitted to the Refuge, a respected rehabilitation center outside Omaha. Crawford covered the cost of the 90-day program himself and spoke directly with the center's director. "This isn't just another addict off the street," he explained. "This man was once a fighter, a real one. I'm not asking for special treatment. Just give him a real shot." The director nodded. "We will, but recovery has to come from him. You understand that, right?" Crawford nodded. Boxing had taught him that lesson early. No one could fight your battles for you. They could only prepare you for the ring and stay in your corner. The next morning after his training session, Crawford visited Marcus at the facility. The transformation, even after one night, was striking. Clean-shaven, showered, dressed in fresh clothes, glimpses of the old Marcus were beginning to resurface. Still, his hands trembled and a faint sheen of sweat betrayed the early stages of withdrawal. "This is gonna be harder than any fight I've ever had, isn't it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Probably," Crawford admitted. "But you remember what Coach Mack used to say about hard fights." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Hard fights make great champions, yeah. I remember." Crawford began visiting twice a week after that, no matter how grueling his training schedule became. Sometimes they talked about old times, the gym, the fighters who'd come and gone. Other times they sat in silence when Marcus was too sick or too drained to speak. Once, Crawford brought an old video of their sparring sessions, grainy footage from a dusty gym, two teenagers trading punches and dreams. "Look at your footwork there," Crawford said, pointing at the screen. "That was better than mine back then." Marcus watched his younger self move with fluid grace, confident, sharp, hungry. "A stranger from another lifetime. I could have been something," he whispered. "You still can be," Crawford said quietly. "Just something different than we thought." 6 weeks into Marcus's rehab, Crawford faced the biggest challenge of his own career, a unification bout against another undefeated champion. The fight had been years in the making, billed as the defining matchup of the decade. Crawford won by TKO in the 9th round, adding yet another belt to his collection. The next morning, his face still marked by battle, Crawford was back at the refuge. Marcus had watched the fight with the other residents, his eyes shining with pride. "Aim that combination in the 8th, that was beautiful, man," Marcus said, grinning. The two broke down the fight like old gym rats, talking feints, angles, timing. For a while, they weren't a world champion and a recovering addict. They were just two fighters again, side by side, the years and the pain temporarily forgotten. "I'm getting out next week," Marcus said finally, finishing his program. Crawford nodded. The unspoken question hung between them. "What now?" "I've been thinking about that," Crawford said, as if reading his mind. "Got a proposition for you." The idea had been forming for weeks. Crawford had recently expanded his youth boxing program in North Omaha, transforming an abandoned warehouse into a state-of-the-art facility for at-risk kids. They needed more coaches, people who understood not just boxing, but the battles these kids faced outside the ring. "You want me to coach?" Marcus asked, incredulous. "I want you to start there," Crawford clarified. "Work with the little ones first, under supervision. You stay clean for 2 years, we move you up to the competition team." Marcus stared at the floor, conflicted. "I don't know if I can be around a gym again. Too many memories." "Or," Crawford countered, "it might be exactly what you need, using what broke you to help someone else heal." 2 days after completing rehab, Marcus walked into Crawford's gym. The familiar sounds and smells hit him like a punch, the rhythmic pop of speed bags, the heavy thud of gloves on leather, the squeak of shoes on canvas. For a moment, he nearly turned around, then he saw them. 24 kids, ages 8 to 17, watching him curiously, kids from the same neighborhoods he and Crawford had once fought to escape. Crawford stood at the center of the room. "Everyone, this is Coach Marcus. He's gonna be working with our junior program." Coach Marcus. The words felt foreign, undeserved. But when a small boy, maybe 9 years old, approached him, gloves too big for his tiny hands, something shifted inside Marcus. "Can you show me how to jab?" the boy asked. Marcus smiled, his hands steady now after months of sobriety. He gently adjusted the boy's stance. "Like this. Keep your other hand up to protect yourself. That's it." Across the gym, Crawford watched pride and quiet satisfaction softening his face. The transition wasn't easy. Marcus struggled with structure, with the weight of being a role model. Twice he nearly relapsed, driving to the old corners where he knew he could score, sitting in his car for hours before calling his sponsor instead. But each day he stayed clean became a foundation for the next strength, layered upon strength, like muscles built through repetition. The kids responded to him in ways they didn't with anyone else. Marcus spoke their language, understood their pain, never judged. When a 14-year-old showed up with bruises that didn't come from boxing, Marcus knew when to ask questions and when to just sit quietly beside him. 4 months into his new role, Marcus approached Crawford after hours. "I want to find my daughter," he said simply. Crawford had been expecting it. "What's her name?" Shauna Willis. She's almost 15 now. Last I heard, her mom moved to Kansas City." Crawford nodded. "I know people who can help. But you need to be ready, she might not want to see you." "I know," Marcus said. "I just need her to know I'm alive. That I'm trying. Whether she wants me in her life or not, that's her choice." It took 3 weeks of searching. Crawford hired a private investigator who specialized in reuniting families. Finally, they found her Shauna Willis, living with her mother in Kansas City, and stepfather in a suburb of Kansas City. She was 14, an honor student and a talented basketball player. When shown a recent photo of Marcus, her mother Tanya initially refused any contact. "He abandoned us. Why would we open that door now?" It was Crawford who finally convinced her. arranging a video call where he personally vouched for Marcus's transformation. "I'm not asking you to trust him yet," Crawford told her. "I'm asking you to give him a chance to earn that trust for Shauna's sake." After much deliberation, Tanya agreed to a supervised meeting. On a Saturday in April, Marcus traveled to Kansas City with Crawford. They met at a public park, neutral ground. When Shauna stepped from her mother's car, Marcus felt his heart constrict. She had his eyes, his height, but her mother's features beautiful, serious, and unmistakably weary. "Hi," Marcus said, his voice barely audible. I know who you are," Shauna interrupted. "Mom showed me pictures." The three of them walked awkwardly through the park, Crawford maintaining a respectful distance. The conversation was stilted at first. Surface-level questions about school, about basketball, about life in Kansas City. "Why did you leave?" Shauna finally asked. The question that had clearly haunted her. Marcus could have offered explanations, excuses about addiction and poor choices. Instead, he gave her the unvarnished truth. "I was weak," he said simply. "I got hurt, got hooked on pills, then harder stuff. When the choice came between drugs or being your dad, I made the wrong choice. Every day since then, I've been wrong." Shauna absorbed this, her expression unreadable. "Are you clean now?" 7 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, Marcus replied. One day at a time. They parted with no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful embrace, just a tentative agreement to keep in touch through supervised calls. It was less than Marcus had hoped for, yet more than he felt he deserved. As they drove back to Omaha, Crawford finally broke the silence. "But that went better than you think." Marcus shook his head. "She hates me." "She's hurt," Crawford corrected. "There's a difference. Hate doesn't ask questions, doesn't agree to calls. She's leaving the door open. Now it's on you to prove you'll be there consistently, whether it's comfortable or not." Consistency became Marcus's new discipline, as demanding as any training regimen he'd ever followed. Weekly calls with Shauna, whether conversations flowed easily or awkwardly. Monthly visits to Kansas City, gradually shifting from the neutral ground of parks and malls to occasionally being invited to her basketball games. Each small step forward felt monumental. Meanwhile, at the gym, Marcus's impact continued to grow. The junior program he coached expanded from 12 kids to 30 with a waiting list. His natural teaching ability combined with his authentic understanding of their struggles created an environment where these children, many from broken homes and dangerous neighborhoods, began to flourish. Crawford watched the transformation with quiet satisfaction, occasionally offering guidance but mostly giving Marcus space to rebuild his life on his own terms. Their friendship deepened beyond their shared boxing past, becoming a genuine brotherhood. 1 year to the day after their chance encounter outside the gas station, Crawford called Marcus into his office. "Got something for you," he said, sliding a small box across the desk. Inside was a simple bronze medallion, a 1-year sobriety chip. "Figured you might want this," Crawford said. "Your sponsor told me you never picked it up from your meeting." Marcus turned the chip over in his fingers. "Didn't seem important at the time." "It's not just for you," Crawford pointed out. "It's for those kids out there who need to see that change is possible." "It's for Shauna." Marcus nodded, slipping the medallion into his pocket. "Speaking of Shauna, her team made state finals. She asked if you'd come to the championship game next weekend." Crawford raised an eyebrow. "Me? Why?" "Because you're the reason she has her father back," Marcus said simply, "as she wants to thank you in person." The championship game was held in a packed high school gymnasium in Kansas City. Crawford and Marcus sat with Tanya and her husband, and initially, at first their reunion carried an awkward tension, a delicate balance of gratitude, guilt, and unspoken history. But as the basketball game unfolded, that awkwardness began to fade. Their shared focus on Shauna eclipsed everything else. She played brilliantly fierce, graceful, relentless, scoring 22 points and leading her team to victory. When the final buzzer sounded, she sprinted across the court, hugging her mother first, then her stepfather. And finally, to Marcus's astonishment, she threw her arms around him. For a moment, time froze. Then Shauna turned to Crawford, extending her hand with the composure of someone far older than 14. "Thank you for believing in my dad when nobody else would," she said softly. "Even when I couldn't." Crawford shook her hand. "Your dad was always worth believing in," he said. "Always was." That evening, as they prepared to drive back to Omaha, Marcus turned to Crawford. "I want to pay you back," he said quietly. "For the rehab, for everything." Crawford waved it off. "Not necessary. It is to me," Marcus insisted. "Not about the money. It's about standing on my own, being accountable." Crawford studied him for a moment, recognizing the weight behind the words. Dignity mattered in recovery as much as willpower. "All right," Crawford said finally, "but not to me. Pay it forward instead." The idea stuck. Over the next few months, Marcus began shaping it into something real, a program for former athletes battling addiction. He called it Second Round, a fusion of recovery principles and the structure of athletic training. Crawford provided seed funding, connections to doctors and counselors, and the platform to launch. By the time Marcus celebrated 2 years clean, Second Round was officially part of the Crawford Community Foundation. The first participant was a former college linebacker who'd lost everything to opioids after a career-ending injury, a story painfully familiar to Marcus. Within 6 months, the program had 12 participants, with Marcus serving as both director and living proof of recovery's possibility. Word spread. National media began to take notice not just of Crawford's flawless boxing record, but of the unique partnership he and Marcus had built. A major sports network aired a documentary following 3 participants through their first year in the program. The story drew attention, funding, and opportunities to expand. When Crawford eventually retired undefeated, undisputed, unbroken, many expected him to move into commentary or high-profile training gigs. Instead, he turned his focus entirely to the work he and Marcus had begun. The BNB Boxing Academy and Second Round became his legacy, a symbol of redemption, resilience, and community that reached far beyond the ropes of the ring. 3 years after their chance encounter, Crawford and Marcus stood side by side at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new joint facility, a combined athletic training and recovery center designed to serve hundreds of at-risk youth and adults. Shauna, now 17 and being recruited by Division I basketball programs, stood proudly beside them. Every summer, she volunteered with the junior boxing program, teaching younger kids about disciplined teamwork and second chances. As city officials spoke and cameras flashed, Marcus leaned over to Crawford and murmured, "Remember when all I asked for was $1? Crawford grinned. "Best dollar I never spent." Later that night, long after the crowd had gone, Crawford found Marcus sitting alone on the edge of the ring inside the new gym. The lights were dim, the air quiet but alive with the faint scent of leather and chalk. "You good?" Crawford asked, taking a seat beside him. "Just thinking," Marcus said. "Thinking about who I'd be right now if you hadn't recognized me that day." Where I'd be? It was a sobering thought. Many of their old friends, the ones they'd grown up with, trained with, hadn't made it. Lost to addiction, prison, violence. The line between survival and tragedy in their neighborhood had always been razor thin. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said after a long pause. "That day at the gas station, why'd you stop? You must get asked for money all the time." Crawford thought about it for a long moment. "Honestly," he said, "I almost didn't. I was running late, stressed about the fight. But something made me look twice. Divine intervention?" Marcus asked with a small, knowing smile. "Maybe," Crawford said. Then after a pause, "Or maybe it was something Coach Mack told me years ago after you disappeared." Marcus looked up, curious. He said, "Champions aren't made by who they defeat. They're made by who they lift up." The words hung in the still air, carrying the weight of everything they'd been through, the fights, the falls, the faith that somehow held. "You know what's crazy?" Marcus said quietly. "I don't even remember going to that gas station that day. I was just walking." He trailed off, shaking his head, both men understanding what went unsaid. Sometimes the smallest detours change the entire course of a life.